Howdy folks, Timber Drifter here. Another windy day in the fire tower. Mostly just watching the cloud shadows pass over the treetops. Smoking some McClelland Bombay Court. One of my favorite tobaccos and one of my favorite pipes. I just finished reading a book of Wendell Berry's poetry. First time I found Wendell Berry was quite a few years ago. I found a small book of his poetry, about that big, in a library book sale. And I had just started reading poetry and appreciating it. And I found his very easy to read, understandable, not much cryptic about it, not fancy. Just kind of to the point in a roundabout sort of way, though, kind of like how a deer trail is. It's the most direct route, but it's got a lot of curves, you know. Wendell Berry is a man that I consider to be an elder. And I don't mean by that he's an old guy, which he is. I mean that by the way we used to use the term elder, which is someone whose opinions, thoughts and deeds are to be respected because of who they are and how they've lived their life and what they've come to be. And that's who Wendell Berry is to me, you know. He's an elder. He's in addition to being a poet and a writer, he's a farmer who used horses instead of tractor. And an activist. And a spokesman for the earth and all of its people, including the animal people. Timbered Choir. I'll read a little bit from the back of the book to give you an idea what the book is and the man. For more than 2 decades, Wendell Berry has spent his Sunday mornings in a walking meditation, observing the world through his poetry. A timbered choir gathers all of these singular works to date, embracing that which is elemental to human life: beauty, death, peace, and hope. Wendell Berry has won the affection of a broad public. He is beloved for his quiet, steady explorations of nature, his emphasis on finding good work to do in the world, and his faith in the solace of family, memory, and community. He's also married to Tanya, which he always manages to bring into conversation somehow. But yeah, I just finished the last poem in this book, and I'm going to read it to you guys. But also, the second book of his that I wrote, which is not, or read, I didn't write it, he did, which is not poetry, is it's called The Unsettling of America, which is worth a read if you've ever looked around you at how the world is working and how everything looks the same all over the place, and question the fundamental of the dominant culture, which is greed. The Unsettling of America is worth a read. It's also worth a read if you don't know what I'm talking about. But This book is broken down into sections of years from 1979 to 1997. The last poem is the one I'm going to read, and it's kind of interesting to me because I think 1997-98 was about the time period where I kind of started to become conscious of the world around me beyond, school and car and girls and things didn't look right to me, and I started trying to figure out a way that I could live in the world without doing more damage. But anyway, here's the poem from 1997 by Wendell Berry. Best of any song is bird song, in the quiet, but first you must have quiet. Even while I dreamed, I prayed that what I saw was only fear and no foretelling. For I saw the last known landscape destroyed for the sake of the objective. The soil bulldozed, the rock blasted. Those who had wanted to go home would never get there now. I visited the office where, for the sake of the objective, the planners planned at blank desks set in rows. I visited the loud factories where the machines were made that would drive ever forward toward the objective. I saw the forest reduced to stumps and gullies. I saw the poisoned river, the mountain cast into the valley. I came to the city that nobody recognized because it looked like every other city. I saw the passages worn by the unnumbered footfalls of those whose eyes were fixed upon the objective. Their passing had obliterated the graves and the monuments of those who had died in pursuit of the objective and who had long ago forever been forgotten, according to the inevitable rule that those who have forgotten forget that they have forgotten. Men, women, and children now pursued the objective as if nobody ever had pursued it before. The races and the sexes now intermingled perfectly in pursuit of the objective. The once enslaved, the once oppressed were now free to sell themselves to the highest bidder, to enter the best paying prisons in pursuit of the objective, which was the destruction of all enemies, which was the destruction of all obstacles, which was the destruction of all objects, which was to clear the way to victory, which was to clear the way to promotion, to salvation, to progress, to the completed sale, to the signature on the contract, which was to clear the way to self-realization, to self-creation, from which nobody ever wanted to go home would ever get there now. For every remembered place has been displaced. The signpost had been bent to the ground and covered over. Every place had been displaced, every love unloved, every vow unsworn, every word unmeant, to make way for the passage of the crowd, of the individuated, the auto-anonymous, the self-actuated, the homeless, with their many eyes open only toward the objective, which they did not yet perceive in the far distance, having never known where they were going, having never known where they came from. I was wakened from my dream of the ruined world by the sound of rain falling slowly onto the dry earth of my place in time. On the parched garden, the cracked open pastures, the dusty grape leaves, the brittled grass, the drooping foliage of the woods, fell still the quiet rain. You see, my mother said, and laughed, knowing I knew the passage she was remembering. Finally, you lose everything. She had lost parents, husband, and friends, youth, health, most comforts, many hopes. Deaf, asleep in her chair, awakened by a hand's touch, she would look up and smile and welcome, as quiet as if she had seen us coming. She watched, curious and affectionate, the sparrows, titmice, and chickadees she fed at her kitchen window. Where did they come from? Where did they go? No matter. They came and went as freely in time of her old age. Her children came and went uncaptured but fed. And I, walking in the first spring of her absence, know again her inextinguishable delight. The wild bluebells, the yellow celandine, violets purple and white, twin leaf, bloodroot, larkspur, the rue anemone, light, light under the big trees. And overheard the red bud blooming, the red bird singing, the oak leaves like flowers still unfolding, and the blue sky. The lovers know the loveliness that is not of their bodies only, though they be lovely, but is of their bodies given up to love. They find the open-heartedness of two desires which both are lonely, until by dying they have their living, and gain all they have lost in giving, each offering the desired desire, beyond what time requires. They are what they surpass themselves to make. They give the pleasure that they take. Now, as a man learning the limits of time, I look anew at a familiar carving, a ring of granite drawing to a circle all space around it, and enclosing a circle. In cross-section the stone itself is square. It doubles the superficial strip of Mobius, and thus makes of two surfaces a solid, dimensioned as the body, a pure thought shaped in stone. One surface is rough and the other smooth, to invite hand or eye into its windings, to remind the mind in its travels, the long and far of its restless reckoning, that where it comes from and where it is going are nowhere in the distance, not in the future or the past, but are forever here, now. The stone turns without limit within itself, dark within light, light within dark. What is above descends, what is below rises. So the carver wrought it out until it came to rest. So what is inward turns outward, as does, we are told, the kingdom of God. So we contain that which contains us. So the departed come to light. There is a day when the road neither comes nor goes, and the way is not a way, but a place. It's always sad when a good book ends. Sometimes hopeful. This one's hopeful. The world today around me in my place is full of blue sky and beautiful white clouds that leave their shadows on the ground. Take care.